The city website and the archived editions, if you will, can be searched out on YouTube. So we are readily available and accessible to everyone. Having said that, we now are in our regular council meeting. We do have a faith blessing this evening, and I would invite Pastor Doug Pollington from the Owen Sound Seventh-day Adventist Church. And welcome, sir.
I'd like to invite you to bow your heads. Gracious Lord, we thank you for life that you give us. We thank you, Lord, for this council, this city that we live in. I pray that your presence will be here to give guidance and direction, Lord. We live in a world that is in trauma. And there are many people in this community that are in trauma too, Lord. Just pray as the council deliberates and the items on their agenda that you will guide, give wisdom, and Lord, thank you for this community that we live in Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Are there any additional items for tonight's agenda, members of council? Councillor Adair?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one on our civic marriage policy.
Okay. Anyone else? Staff? Madam Clerk.
There's an additional bylaw coming forward this evening. It's 2012-2008. It is a bylaw authorizing borrowing on amortizing debentures in the principal amount of $4,815,569 towards the cost of the West Side Boat Launch, blanket expropriation, 10th Street East and 9th Avenue intersection, Bayshore heating upgrade, 6th Avenue sanitary sewer replacement, East Side remediation, wastewater treatment plant upgrades, and Harrison Park erosion control projects.
Okay. Mr. Roberts.
Yes, Your Worship. We have one additional item that was distributed to on Friday afternoon as at the wastewater treatment plant ad hoc meeting minutes.
Okay.
Which council has received.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Any members of council? I will be declaring a pecuniary interest on item the November 7th meeting of the bylaw committee. It is with regards to volunteer parking passes for the Owen Sound firefighters toy drive. When we get there, I'll ask the acting mayor to take the seat and I will leave the room. Could I have confirmation of the minutes from November 19th, please?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Boddy, that the minutes of the regular meeting of City Council held on November 19th, 2012, as printed, be adopted.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Minutes of the pre-budget meeting of council held on November 13th, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Boddy, that the minutes of the pre-budget meeting of City Council held on November 13, 2012, as printed, be adopted.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Resolution moving council into committee of the whole.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Boddy, that City Council now go into committee of the whole to consider public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion's carried. Thank you. We're now in committee of the whole. We do have one public meeting, which is with regards to the disposal of municipal property, 6th Avenue West road allowance. It's north of 26th Street West. And I will invite the clerk, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can advise that notice of this meeting was published in the Sun-Times on November 23rd. It was also posted on the city's website, and letters were sent to the adjacent homeowners. The notice was requesting a stopping up and closing and disposing of municipal property. I can advise since that time we have determined that a bylaw, I believe it's 1993-2004, has previously permanently closed the road. So we'll be looking this evening for comments respecting the disposition only. I have not received any written comments at this time. Sorry, one more thing I can advise: if anyone does wish to speak this evening, the personal information collected will be pursuant to the Municipal Act and will be used as per the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone here this evening who would like to speak to the disposition of this piece of property? There's no pushing and shoving? Okay, I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone here to speak to or comment on the disposition of this piece of municipal property? Seeing none, we'll move on to the back to the regular council meeting, and I have to say that was probably the shortest, most silent public meeting we have ever had in the history of the city. So I'm not sure what that means, but I'm sure I'll be told. Oh, deputations. We are at the point in our agenda where we, if we have any scheduled deputations, we would invite them to come forward. We do have a public question period. This is an opportunity for any member of the public here this evening who would like to ask a question or questions of this council to please step forward to the podium and state your name, address, and please proceed with your questions. Yes. Welcome, and please give your name.
Tonight I would just like to ask a few other questions on the business of the wastewater treatment plant. I addressed you all previously. Sorry. Oh, thank you, Pam. To repeat, I addressed you all previously on the wastewater plant, and I still do have a few questions. I believe that most of you should have received a copy of a presentation that I put together. If you have all read that and are aware of it, there's no need of my going through it unless anyone else requires that information or would like me to go through it again. It's the same silent group. Okay, then I would like to just say a couple of things that aren't on that particular document that I handed into you, that have to do with the article that was in the newspaper on your acceptance of the, or at least that the negotiation process had gotten to a point where Conestoga Rovers had diminished their price to a certain amount and the reasons why. I read that article, and I can tell you that there was nothing in it that changed my mind about the presentation. So in reference to some of the things that were mentioned, there was a letter from the reference to and letter from the National Research Council, and there was also one from the Professional Engineers of Ontario Consulting Branch. Both those letters, as far as I'm concerned, state the obvious. I have absolutely no problem with a technically based procedure to rate anyone on anything. However, I do believe that those letters spoke to the fact that we the city, you the council, were using that method, and they were congratulating you on your effort to maintain that kind of clear and transparent process. I don't know that they were aware of all of the questions that some of the people in the community have when they made their decision based on the fact that you were using the process. By that I mean the technical creation of the process and the evaluation of the process, and whether or not the community understands that either. So my questions still remain, and they pivot around the fact that I believe that you have said in Mr. Prentice's letter that the council, the city, had two choices. One was to negotiate with the highest bidder, or they could have interviewed both parties. You chose the negotiation. That is your choice. I'm not sure it was in the best interest of the community or the best interest of the industrial branch of our community that counts on you to have some kind of sense that they may be a contributing group to this community, and it's their taxpayers that will, or the people that work for them that are the taxpayers in this community, will be responsible for paying the bills. So having said that, all I can tell you is that I still feel the way I did in the presentation. I've given you all the reasons I feel that way, and thank you for listening to me, and good luck.
Another question?
Nope, it's not going to lift. Okay. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I must be quite upset about this whole thing about the sewage plant upgrade. Otherwise, I wouldn't be standing here. I hate this stuff. Otherwise, if I was a public speaker, I'd probably be up there with you guys. But there are some things that I wanted to say. First of all,
Excuse
my
me just
name
for a
is Tom
second.
Beery,
There we go.
and I am a professional engineer and retired businessman. Really enjoying our lives here in Owen Sound. Actually, this controversy, when it started, I wasn't here for the start of it. I was in the jungle in Peru. So I've been trying to do a little catch-up since then. I'm very proud of my wife, by the way, of the work she's done to get all of this information together and try to support local business and local jobs. Okay. I'm quite surprised that I don't hear anyone on the council having similar concerns. But this isn't the first time either, which I guess why I'm upset. McLean Engineering suffered a situation similar to this. Not the same, but same kind of a end result. Now, for a little background on what I want to talk about specifically.
We need to get to a question.
Okay. Well, my first question is Baker and McKenzie here tonight?
Is Baker and Mackenzie here?
A representative? No?
Don't believe so.
Okay. Well, I have a problem with their letter, so I thought that maybe they'd be here, they could answer it. Supporting the city's case to negotiate only with JLR. As a taxpayer, I hope that the city didn't pay very much for that letter, because the advice states only the obvious. The choice the city made, but completely ignores the second option the city had. And the fact that they didn't follow the spirit of the city's own purchasing bylaws, section 2.5 and 10.6. They should have interviewed the top two bidders. That would have taken care of that. The spirit of that bylaw enables the city to show a preference to a local supplier. So the question is, why wasn't it done? In Baker and McKenzie's rather long letter, there was no mention of the city's purchasing bylaw. And I think there's just possibly a chance that the city may be out of order with respect to this matter by ignoring your own bylaw. So I think at this stage, so I guess my question is, why do you ignore your own bylaw? And before I say anything else, I'll just sit down. Thank you very much. And Merry Christmas to everybody. And if that is considered defamatory in these days and ages, I would say have a great holiday.
You've covered all the bases.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. And the matter that you brought up will be dealt with later on in the agenda. Any other members of the public here to ask a question of this council? Seeing none, we'll move along. We have 3 items of correspondence. which requires direction of this council. The first one is a inquiry from the MPP's office for municipal delegations at the upcoming Rural Ontario Municipal Conference and the Ontario Good Roads Association Conference. I would bring this to council's attention simply to put your minds together when it comes to if you're attending that, if you're not planning to attend that conference, if you could please email to the clerk your ideas, concerns, questions that you would like posed to any of the ministers or parliamentary assistants that we may be able to meet with while we're there. I guess a motion to receive that would be in order. Moved by Councillor McManaman. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. We have an item from Pitch In Ontario requesting the City of Owen Sound's participation in Pitch In Week. What is council's direction? Councillor Chamberlain.
I'll make a motion to receive that.
Okay. So a motion to simply receive. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We have a letter from the Consulting Engineers of Ontario with regards to the endorsement of the qualifications-based selection process. And that's on the screen there now. Councillor Twaddle.
Yeah, motion to receive.
Okay. We have a motion to receive. Councillor McManaman.
Worship, I don't think we should let this pass without at least mentioning publicly that this is a letter from the Consulting Engineers of Ontario that endorses the city's position and process that the city's process that we've taken in regards to the wastewater treatment plant upgrade. This is an association of which most, if not all, engineering firms in Ontario belong to, and I think there's been a lot in the media about this issue, the wastewater treatment plant upgrade and the consulting engineers, and it was certainly gratifying, at least for me, we received this letter unsolicited from their association, commenting and commending us for the process that we have taken with this matter. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Well, we're certainly not Montreal, are we? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is received. Thank you, or passed. We do have a series of items in the consent agenda, many of which are planning notices, of which our planning staff has indicated no comment, as well as new business licenses and some minutes from the Owen Sound North Grey Union Public Library. What is council's direction on this? Councillor Dare.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the consent agenda.
Okay. Any discussion on any of those items? Councillor Lemon? No, I'm sorry. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We now have a report for the Executive Assistant and PR Coordinator with regards to the sister city proposal, the City of Chengdu in the People's Republic of China. You'll find that on page 76. There is a recommendation. Councillor Lemon.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that the sister city report, I'm a little surprised that the sister cities report is inaccurate, in that we have two sister cities. Octoreo St. Anne's Bay in Jamaica was the first sister city that we had, or have, because it's never been rescinded. So I would request that that report be amended to include that other sister city, which I believe is 30 years old, or about 30 years ago we went with them. I think there's a lot of merit in this. I think particularly because this is where Norman Bethune grew up, and I would move the recommendation.
Okay. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. I won't be able to support that recommendation. While this was an interesting idea raised by a resident, as you read through this, I'm not sure it's a priority for us at this time, so I won't be supporting the recommendation.
Councillor Adair.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was originally opposed to this exercise, but after I had a chat with Councillor Purdon afterwards, and she mentioned the economic development possibilities with this, and I've been giving that some thought over the last little while, and I'm thinking that perhaps the Economic Development Committee should look at this. I'm not entirely sure that this is the city in China that we might want to twin with, or sister, or whatever the correct term is. Georgian College here in Owen Sound, and its International Marine Program, has a memorandum of understanding with a marine college in a city in China. And I'm wondering if that might not bear more fruit economically for the city if we are bent on twinning with a community that, one that Georgian College, an institution in this community that we're all trying to grow, might not have a bigger economic spin-off for us. And I was thinking about that after the mayor of Stratford was speaking. Stratford's not that much larger than Owen Sound, and their mayor and members of council routinely go to corporate head offices and that outside of the country, drumming up business and making those inroads within different industries and commerce. So if Councillor Lemon was willing to amend his motion to, instead of establishing yet another committee, refer the issue to the Economic Development Committee, I could certainly support that.
I consider that a friendly amendment because if we could involve Georgian College, and if it benefits them, that benefits the whole community. And let's take a look at it. And I think that's the best way of handling it, and I accept that friendly amendment.
Okay, Councillor Purdon.
So the amendment would be to send it to the Economic Development Committee and then to look for some other city in China that would potentially be a good sistering opportunity. Just to understand what the amendment is.
And the Councillor Adair, you can certainly correct me if I'm wrong. What I was hearing was the councillor suggesting that this community that Georgian College has quite a mature relationship with, that the city investigate perhaps pursuit of that municipality.
So that's the amended motion is not to have a sistering arrangement with the Dai, the county of Dai, or the city of Chengdu. So we wouldn't be looking at that particular community with this amended motion.
We'll go to Councillor Adair for more.
I think the issue should go to the Economic Development Committee. I certainly have an opinion that if we want to really get a bang for our proverbial buck on this, that the city that Georgian College already has a relationship with the Marine College there would be my preferred choice, but I wait to hear from the competency of our Economic Development Committee to view that. I think that having a sister city, if there are economic benefits, is a good idea. I think that setting up yet another committee is a bad idea. And we already have a committee that I think could look at this, so I think they should look at the issue of this city or any other city. They should look at the issue.
Okay. A few people would like to speak to this. I'm going to go right to the city manager and then Councillor Body.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would, I think, draw to your attention in the report there are 4 suggestions of what a committee could consider, and I think that could equally go to the Economic Development Committee for them to turn their mind directly to the four questions that are put forward. One of the things that at a staff level we would certainly suggest that if you are going to enter into this, you need to have some parameters around it, and you need to put resources from ourselves into it. So it is a little more complex than simply putting up your hand and saying, we want you to be our sister city. You need to put some commitment around it as well. So it could, as Councillor Adair has said, go to the Economic Development Committee, but I would like to see them look at the 4 points and bring a report back.
Thank you. Councillor Body.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that almost covers what I was going to say. I have concerns where we're looking at approximate 2% cut from the Ontario government every year for the next 10 years. We've got staff cut over the last couple of years, and we're starting to run thin to add more things into the pile. Economic development, I sit in that committee, and boy, we've got an awful lot of things on the plate already that we're having trouble getting to. I think the big thing is going to be identifying the ongoing financial support, and if there isn't any ongoing financial support, I don't know how we move ahead. For now, I will agree to the motion to send it to economic development. For now, I have reservations that it will go too far, that we can afford to let it go too far, unfortunately.
Councillor Wright, and then back to Councillor Purdon.
Thank you very much. I think Councillor Body just spoke the words that were coming out of my mouth. I'm not sure exactly what the motion is at this point. Councillor beside me, Lemon, moved that recommendation and then it was changed. And I can't support that because I don't think that that's what we can do right now. I do support forwarding this on to economic development, period, without any ties to it whatsoever, and let economic development take a look at it. I think we have far too much on our plate right now to get involved in anything else at this time as a council.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Purdon.
I know the city has a great deal on its plate. I think building relationships internationally is something that we really do need to do as a city. We need to be looking outside of our little place and looking to other places. And this is, I think, we can look at it as a cup half full or a cup half empty, whichever way we want to look at it. And there's many opportunities, I think, with a relationship with another country. We've been asked as a city, because of a relationship that already exists and because of parallel interests in our two communities, in the City of Chengdu and Owen Sound. So I certainly think it's worth exploring. I don't have any difficulty supporting it, going to economic development, looking at the parameters. I do certainly understand that there's staff time and also council time involved, but I think it will be seen to be beneficial for the city in all ways to be looking outside of our kind of borders here. And China is an enormous country with a huge affection for Canada. And I think if there's a way of building that into our community, then it can be very, very helpful for some of the issues we're dealing with.
Sure. Councillor Adair.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. There's certainly, if we're looking at this from an economic development perspective, and we think China is the place. Norman Bethune, in and of himself, is the door opener. He is considered, a hero with a capital H in China. There are statues, stamps. Everyone in China knows who Dr. Norman Bethune is. Strangely enough, he's become, our federal government also uses Dr. Bethune when it travels to China, but I think maybe my first year or two on City Council, when we were building the new hospital, I suggested that we call it the Dr. Norman Bethune Medical Center, and was told that we would never name a building after a communist, So it's interesting that as China moves towards more sort of a similar type of economy than that we have, that Dr. Thune is the person who our government and we can use to open those doors in China. He was also a big proponent of this thing called socialized medicine that Tommy Douglas also took up, but he was just a little, maybe a bit ahead of his time.
Okay, Councillor Lemon.
Well, it's a move of the motion to wrap it up. It's interesting, but the recognition of Norm Thune is reminder in Canada and major in China. One of the things that he did develop was blood transfusion during the Spanish Civil War, and that went on in World War II, saving a lot of Canadian lives. If he was a communist, so be it. The fact was, he was a pioneer of medicine, and we should be honoring that.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Everybody clear on the motion? Maybe we could have the clerk please read the motion.
That in consideration of a report dated the 22nd, 2012, from the Executive Assistant and PR Coordinator, City Council receives the report respecting the Sister City proposal, and further that the item be referred to the Economic Development Committee for further review and a report back to Council.
To the mover. That's good. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor McManaman, that motion is carried. Thank you. We are at item 12B2. This is a report from the city clerk. Wow, 11 different items. We can go through them one at a time, Council, which I'm quite happy to steer us. Or if you have another idea, please throw it forward. Councillor Twaddle.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. A couple of questions that I'd like to ask, or points that I'd like to raise before we deal with them as a group or individually. With regards to item number 2, provide direction respecting a council appointment to the Festival of Northern Lights. My appointment was made for this year, ending at the end of January, at the request of the Festival of Northern Lights, and I would recommend that we ask the festival whether, in fact, they want a representative from council, and I'm not aware, but perhaps they have asked.
Through you, Your Worship, the festival has advised that they would welcome a councillor for another term.
All right. On item number 3, the Recreation and Parks Advisory Committee appointments from Meaford and Georgian Bluffs. This says be from members of council. And I'm not sure that it's appropriate for us to direct them whom they might appoint. They probably will choose to appoint members of council, but we appoint members of the public to boards and committees. So I would suggest that that be revised to say that appointments from the Township of Meaford and the Township of Georgian Bluffs be by members of council. Then it can be members of council or not members of council as they choose. It just doesn't restrict them. Unless there is some specific wording in the agreement that would require something different, and currently there is no agreement, so I don't think it matters.
Maybe we'll go to staff. Ms. Coulter, is there anything that you're aware of at this point?
Through you, Your Worship, I'm not aware that the agreement specifies that the appointment from Georgian Bluffs and Meaford be a member of council. We can confirm that, however, through the city clerk, if the motion can be crafted such that, we take our direction from that agreement.
Okay. Thank you.
So,
Carry on.
So, if I may then, I would move the recommendations. Number 1, we approve the policy regarding council seating order and selection of committees. 2, that we appoint a member of council to the Festival of Northern Lights Board. That we direct that the Parks and Rec members from Meaford and Georgian Bluffs be by members of council and leave that at their choice. Reconfirm the appointment of the existing public members to the Physician Recruitment Committee. Maintain the Fire Services Committee as an advisory committee to meet at the call of the chair. Remove the Frank Smith Ways and Means Committee from the committee selection process. Dissolve the Friends of Harrison Park Ad Hoc Committee pursuant to the mandate having been met. Dissolve the Regional Recreation Center Steering Committee pursuant to the mandate having been met. I understand there may be, there is one more meeting scheduled, and I don't know whether that would resolve it, but these would take effect at the end of January 2013, so I believe the mandate will be met by then. Reconfirm the appointment of existing council members to the Recreation Agreement Negotiating Ad Hoc Committee, and reconfirm the appointment of the existing council members to the Wastewater Treatment Plant Upgrade Steering Committee.
Thank you. Councillor McManaman?
Question, Councillor Twaddle, number 4, the bylaw committee. I don't believe you said that one.
Yeah, I was going to move that we disband it just to make Councillor Adair happy, but we have a pretty a significant work plan in front of us for this evening, and
That will all go away with the committee goes.
and yeah, so that the bylaw committee in fact be a standing advisory committee of council.
Councillor Adair?
Maybe this might be a separate motion, but the EWAC committee, which has met, I think, once during the entire year, I would move a number 12, which is that committee be dissolved.
Yeah, and thank you. Actually, I had a note about that. I would accept that as a friendly amendment, and just that the responsibilities of UAC be assigned to the Operations Advisory Committee.
Councillor Lemon, then Councillor Purdon.
That was the issue that I had with
Councillor Purdon. Councillor Body?
I asked Councillor Twaddle if he wants to amend number 3, that should a recreation partnership agreement not be entered into at some point into in the future with Georgian Bluffs of Meaford, if we shouldn't set out that they wouldn't be appointed to the committee if there wasn't an agreement.
Absolutely, and I sort of took that as a given, but it's appropriate to acknowledge that number 3 would only apply if, in fact, with either municipality, if there is a recreation services agreement.
City Manager?
Worship, I hate to beat up on number 3, but I think it's somewhat confusing the way we've worded it now. And in fact, I don't think you need the first part of that at all if you are leaving it up to the discretion of the 2 municipalities who they're going to appoint. By changing that from to by, it could be interpreted as by members of this council. So I think you could almost take that first section entirely out because it would remain the same as it is today.
Or, yeah, or by members of their respective councils. Yeah, thank you.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you for the report. That cleaned up quite a few loose ends that have been sitting around, so I thank you for that. I'd also encourage those that are present and those that are watching to consider volunteering their time on a city committee or board. This is the time of year that applications are being accepted, and we are always looking for new minds, new thoughts, and new actions to put into motion here at the city. So I'd encourage you to contact the clerk's office and check into that. We are at the next item, which is the amended agreement of purchase and sale of 89th Street East. What is council's direction? Councillor Purdon.
I move the recommendation that we execute an agreement of purchase as identified in the in-camera meeting that we had today, December the 3rd.
Okay. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We have the award of RFP 12-26, Parcel 1. Next item. What's council's direction? Councillor Wright.
I'll move the recommendation on this one that the report from the manager and purchase and Investo and Sound Consultant, City Council award parcel number 1, land legally described as Part 1 plan, etc., including in the request to Barry's construction, excuse me, etc.
Councillor Body.
If I may, in error, I overlooked that one. I will declare pecuniary interest and leave the room at this moment. Thanks.
That is noted. Thank you. The motion's on the floor. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have an item with regards to Ribfest, I believe, is next up. And it's a request for use of Kelso Beach in 2013. Councillor Chamberlain.
I'll move the report as written, and that we accept it as written.
Okay, further discussion? Yeah, Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much. I guess I'm understanding that if they do expand onto the soccer field, that damage would, is that the reason why we're upping the increase? It seems to me that's a lot of money that we're asking for, and I'm not sure that if I wasn't the Ribfest, I'd be saying, I don't think we can afford to come to Owen Sound. It just seems to me that we're asking a lot. If I could have an explanation from staff, perhaps.
Ms. Coulter?
Through you, Your Worship, certainly the city's strategic plan supports events such as Ribfest and supports the city's continued work with those groups. You'll see through the letters from Ray Utola, who is the event organizer, that are attached to the report, that they've made a few requests. And this year, they'd like to go from the outfield of the ball diamond, really, and occupy the soccer field with the ribber trucks. And if you were at Ribfest, you'll have seen the ribber trucks, and the event goes rain or shine. So if they expand onto the soccer field, there could be potential, if the weather was to be wet during the event or leading up from the event, if they have, 32,000 people like they report in 2012, together with the large trucks, to do a significant amount of damage to that turf infield. We're recommending to you, in order to protect the city moving forward, that we would have a security deposit for the event. If the organizer shies away from that, what we're recommending is that we work with them and look at other areas of Kelso Beach Park where damage to the turf would be less devastating to groups like minor soccer, who book that field on a regular basis, and have the event there but have it in a location off the soccer field.
Councillor Purdon?
It's just a question for staff as well. I think in the report it's that there are other groups that do use the soccer pitch as well. The Summer Folk was one, and the other was Sydenham Sports for the sports fisherman event. Do they pay a $40,000 security fee as well when they rent those places?
They're not.
Through you, Your Worship, those groups do not, and the reason they don't is if it's wet during the Salmon Spectacular, they simply don't use the infield for overflow parking. They only use it during good weather and when the field's dry. Summer Folk has camping on that area, and they don't, through our agreement with Summerfolk, there's not large trucks and vehicles allowed in there. Their nonprofit groups staff recommend to you that the risk of damage is significantly less. Our security deposit for those events is in the range of $2,000.
Councillor Twaddle? No, you're good? Okay. Councillor Wright?
If I could just continue, Your Worship, to our Director of Community Services. Could we not make some kind of an arrangement that we do have a damage deposit given, and if there's no damage, that they would get that back like we do with other facilities?
Through you, Your Worship, that's exactly what we would recommend, that at the end of the event, that money would be returned fully to them.
Thank you.
Councillor Lemon?
Yeah, we're trying to encourage events, not discourage them. And I'm really thinking that we're getting a little carried away in terms of the size of the deposit we want. I mean, a worst case scenario happens, yes, something could happen. But that's a lot of money. I think our strategic plan says we should focus on relationships and image with all citizens and all this stuff, but it says we're supposed to encourage events. Putting a punitive deposit is not encouraging an event.
Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Worship. I think the key part of the recommendation is the last point, item C, that the event organizer and city staff work together to explore site plan options. That's clearly the answer here. Council Beach is a big park. Summerfolk runs an event for 3 days with 10,000 people, and they're able to do it within that site without damaging the sports field. So clearly that's the best option here, and I know staff will go back with that, and I'm quite sure they'll be able to come to agreement, and I suppose if they can't, they'll be back here. So I support the motion.
Okay. Councillor Twaddle?
No, that was my
Okay.
point as well. Thank you.
Councillor Purdon?
So I'm just trying to understand the intent of the report. So by putting a very high security deposit of $40,000, is that to try kind of say to them, this isn't such a good idea, or this is going to cost such a lot of money? Or wouldn't it be perhaps better if we don't really want big trucks on the soccer pitches to say no, but we'll find another place in Kelso Park? Because even if they pay $40,000 and the soccer pitch is ruined, we're not going to have a soccer pitch for the rest of the summer. So wouldn't it be better just to say no big trucks on the soccer pitch?
Through you, Your Worship, that's exactly our point, that it's just not appropriate. The risk to the city for us to have a field that's completely damaged at the end of the event. Not only would minor soccer be impacted and other groups through lost bookings, but we would have to incur that cost to repair the field. And we did the estimate at the time of Big Music Fest, and that was the fee. Certainly, that's exactly what we're hoping to do, is accommodate this event. It's a great event at Kelso Beach Park and other areas of the park that would have, opportunity for much less damage.
Go ahead.
So just in terms of positioning us as a city, putting the report in that type of language, just say, and leaving out the part about the security deposit, I think feels more positive in terms of encouraging the event. Does the event need to know why we don't want them on that field? It just, I think, speaks to a more positive image for the city when we can say, we want to have you, the soccer pitch doesn't work because of the nature of your event, but we'll find other ways.
Councillor Lemon?
I agree with Councillor Purdon. This whole thing is worded wrong, or incorrectly, I'm sorry. That first A should be completely out of there. It's sort of like, we're going to get you with a big bat.
Okay, Councillor Lemon,
negotiate.
do we have a motion on the floor, Madam Clerk, at this time? Jan moved, okay, Councillor Chamberlain moved the motion, so we do have a motion.
Okay, my question to Councillor Chamberlain, would you consider removing Clause A and just say that the, and B, that the organizer would work with them to explore site plan options not using the soccer pitch, which is what they're trying to do, but sending a message. It's going to be $40,000, folks. They're going to be walking away from Owen Sound.
I'm going to go to Ms. Coulter and then Ms. Corsi.
Your Worship, the request from the event organizer, and perhaps this goes to explain the wording of the resolution, but they specifically ask in the request to use the soccer field area and to not have an increase in the fee or the security deposit. That's why we worded the resolution in the way that was worded in order to answer the request that was asked. I'm certainly, if there's a better way to word it, happy to have that.
Okay, Councillor Body? No. Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Worship. I think it was discussed about encouraging events to come here. To just say we don't allow anybody on Council Beach Soccer Field is not accurate either, because we do allow. Rib Fest went on, or sorry, Big Music Fest, excuse me, Big Music Fest went on for 2 years and paid in the neighborhood of how much in the damage deposit to the director?
Year 1, I believe the deposit was $40,000. Year 2, council made a conscious decision at the event organizer's request to reduce the security to $25,000.
The point being that we're not banning events on the Kelso soccer field. We're saying if you want to do it there, though, there is a risk involved and there's a security deposit. To treat this group any differently than we would treat the Big Music Fest, so if there's some discussion about 25,000 instead of 40, I certainly, if that's the number we gave Big Music Fest, that's perhaps the number we should be using, but I think we are telling them you can have it on the soccer field, but there's a risk involved and you have to take that risk, just like Big Music Fest did. But again, I think the main point is they need to work with staff to try and find other site plan initiatives. But he specifically asked for the soccer field. If he specifically wants the soccer field, these are the costs involved. So.
Is there any more of the discussion? Everybody clear on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Lemon, I'm also opposed. That motion is carried. We have a report from the community planner with regards to 1900 20th Street East. That's a site plan approval. Councillor Purdon.
So I'll move the recommendation to approve the site plan for the Police Services Communication Tower at 1900 20th Street East.
I want to say car 54, where are you? But I won't. I'll just think it out loud. Everybody okay with the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We do have a report from the Director of Operations with regards to results of a waste collection request for proposal. Councillor Twaddle.
Thank you, Your Worship. Perhaps the Director of Operations would like to just briefly outline this recommendation. The recommendation is that we contract out residential curbside waste collection beginning in 2013 at a savings of, at a minimum, $17,000 a year on an annual basis, but in fact, when contributions to reserve for equipment are taken into consideration, the savings are close to $60,000 a year.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Worship. Just speaking with respect to the proposals that were issued, the request proposals that were issued for waste collection services. Currently, that's a service that the city provides in-house, but in looking at trying to reduce costs, we did solicit proposals. 2 proposals were received, one being from Miller Waste Systems and one from Waste Management. Of the 2 proposals received, the one from Miller Waste was the least expensive proposal received, and both were compliant. Looking at the program as being presented through this report, the intention was that in order to ensure that when it came to 2015, the city still had the flexibility to be able to bring the service back in-house, we purposely excluded the reserves of $39,000 or let's say $40,000 a year, just to ensure that we would have adequate reserves established such that we could purchase that equipment again and reestablish that service without having any significant impact on the finances of the city. Now, the reserves that are currently in place at this point in time are roughly about $400,000. The cost of a new garbage packer is roughly about $250,000. If we were in 2015 to buy 2 packers again, we would require about $500,000 in the reserves. And of course, that is if we would want 2 packers. Currently, we have 2 packers. We could, in theory, do it with 1 if we were able to rent a vehicle somewhere else or obtain some alternate means or delay the service based upon any repair requirements we might have. So just to follow up on Councillor Twaddle's point that there's a potential, yes, to save approximately $60,000 a year, and there's also the potential to free up roughly about $400,000 worth of reserve capital that has been built up over the course of the years for that equipment.
Thank you for that overview. Councillor Twaddle.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. McRoberts. I would move the recommendation that we enter in an agreement with Miller Waste for curbside collection beginning on February the 1st, 2013, and further that we refer to our 2013 budget deliberations, the discussion around ongoing, whether we would continue an ongoing contribution to this reserve or use that money in some other fashion in the 2013 budget.
Okay, motion's on the floor. Councillor McManaman.
No, thank you, Your Worship. I support the recommendation. I do think it's key in 2015, and some communities, what they've seen, they enter in these agreements, and then the second agreement, it gets ramped up substantially cost-wise. I think it's important for us to be able to have the flexibility, if necessary, to get back into the business if a future contract was not palatable. So I support having a reserve there, but I also support there's no need to continue to put money into a reserve if, as Mr. McRoberts has just said, it's already sufficient now. So we currently have 1 packer on the road.
Through you, Your Worship, at any one time, we only have 1 packer on the road, but we do have 2 packers that we've kept basically for the flexibility of being able to, should one break down or need to go for repair or maintenance, that we'd still be able to provide the service without any interruption.
But we have more than enough in the reserve for 1 packer, and I'm not sure the luxury of having a second one is something we'd want to do. But if we're going to discuss it at budget, that's fine.
Councillor Blatty.
Thank you, Your Worship. When I first read this, I had some concerns that there's only savings of $15,000, but given now understanding that the reserve for the vehicle being set aside, that's money that we can put towards other infrastructure or whatever when we get to the discussions around budget, and $60,000 a year annual savings in total is pretty substantial, and $50,000, $60,000, whatever it works out to be, that's pretty good.
Councillor Purdon.
I have a couple of questions and an observation. One is that this council could decide whichever route we go, whether we contract out the waste collection or not, simply not to put more money into the capital replacement fund over the next couple of years because we have an adequate amount. So I don't think we should be including that in the cost savings in this discussion. The waste collection, when we contract out, will be a cost saving of around $15,000 a year. Is that correct, Mr. McRoberts?
Through your worship, it's actually about $16,000, rounding up slightly.
Rounding up. And I suppose my question would be is, two questions. One is, we already have contracted services with Miller Waste, and I think we know what kind of product they offer or service they offer. From your perspective, is this going to be a good deal for the customers who have got garbage in the curbside as opposed to our own employees? That's the one question.
Yeah, through your worship, certainly we have had a positive experience working with Miller Waste. They currently provide our waste disposal service as well as our recycling service. Overall, I believe that their service has been satisfactory and to good. Certainly, this is a performance-based contract, so the contract specifically speaks to what the requirements that they're required to do, and that would be what it would be based upon. So we certainly have the mechanisms with the agreement to deal with any performance issues they might have. I believe that, based upon my experience with Miller Waste at the current time, they would provide an adequate level of service.
And my second question is, often with contracting out, wages are much lower or can be much lower. Do you have any information at all how wages compare for an employee with Miller Waste and an employee from the city, just generally speaking? Because there's also, I think, in terms of wages, a net loss at times when we lose well-paying jobs.
Through you, your worship, I certainly do not have any information about what the wage rates would be for the employees of Miller Waste, so I certainly can't answer that question.
Councillor Lemon.
Well, Your Worship, this is the kind of move that municipalities, not just Owen Sound, but across Ontario, are going to be working towards. We simply have to cut costs. Taxpayers can't afford big jumps in taxes, and the only way we can do it is by reducing costs where we can. It's unfortunate in some other areas where we would like to reduce costs that we're sort of prevented, but I think this is a good opportunity, and I thank staff for a good report.
Thank you. Councillor Purdon?
I won't be supporting this recommendation because I don't think the cost advantage is really significant enough to cause the kind of upset that happens in an entire department when we start contracting out services. If it was a larger amount of money that was going to make a substantial savings for the city, I might be considering it, but for $15,000 a year, I think there's going to be a big disruption in the entire department. It's not a lot of money that we're going to be saving, and I won't be supporting the motion.
Okay. Councillor Twaddle.
I want to correct any misunderstanding. The savings are close to $60,000 a year when you factor in the savings in transfer to reserve. If we maintain equipment, we need to continue maintaining transfers to the reserve. So the real savings to waste collection are $60,000 a year, including the transfer to reserve, which we will not make if we aren't planning to buy new equipment. If we are planning to get back into it in 3 years, that's a different story. But the true cost saving is $60,000 a year, $58,000, $59,000 a year.
Councillor Purdon.
Okay, so I'm just not getting the numbers then, because I don't understand why we have to, if we have such a good reserve, why we would need to be putting the money in the reserves every year if we're providing the service, or if Miller Waste Disposal's providing this service. So I don't know where you're getting the 60, Councillor Twaddle.
I think I'm going to defer to staff. I have to say, when I was myself reading through this on the weekend, I didn't see anywhere in here any acknowledgement of a $60,000 a year savings. What I kept reading was 16,000 and change going forward, and that's the basis on which I would expect most members of council would base their decision on. So I'm really thinking that some members of council, me included, are a little curious to know how this 60,000 number has been developed, and I think members of the public need to know that as well.
Through you, Your Worship. Just to understand that what we looked at was initially within the report, we identified that there was a savings on the assumption that we would continue to contribute to the reserve, looking forward to 2015 to make sure that we still had flexibility and options available. Subsequently, we've been able to look and determine exactly what was in the reserve for those two specific pieces of equipment, and it's essentially approximately $400,000, which, given that we could, in theory, work with one packer, $250,000 would be adequate reserve to basically support purchasing a new packer in 2015. On that basis, there would be no more requirement for us to contribute to the reserve until 2015, at such time we made a decision as to which direction we wished to go. Should we decide at this point in time, though, that we keep the service in-house and continue to provide it as a city service that's done by our employees, then we would need to still contribute to that reserve to some degree, even though we may replace that piece of equipment, which in theory comes due the next year and the year after. We would have to have those reserves available, and then we would have to reestablish contributing to those reserves to replace those vehicles as time progressed on. So in essence, we would still need to contribute to a reserve, likely in consultation with the Director of Finance. We may be able to look at whether that reserve contribution of $39,000 is maybe a little too high for the type of equipment we're looking at, and maybe could be somewhat reduced, but there would still be some contribution. I hope I've clarified that.
Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Worship. And just to clarify it with Mr. McRoberts, but between now and 2015, we will, assuming the motion passed and we have a discussion at budget, we would no longer need to contribute almost $39,000 into a reserve between now and 2015. That's correct? I mean, if council were so wish to pass that.
Yeah, if council so chose to contract out the waste collection services, if we take the amount we might receive for the vehicles that we currently own in a sale, add that to the existing reserve, we'll have roughly about $460,000 in the reserve. On that basis, we would be pretty close to having $500,000 required to replace 2 trucks if we so choose to in 2015, and definitely adequate surplus or adequate reserves available to purchase 1 truck in 2015.
So moving forward, we would have a $16,000 savings plus this $39,000 in reserve equipment, because you've just demonstrated we would have more than an adequate amount in the reserve. So that's how I think the $60,000 comes. 39 plus the 15 or 16.
Correct.
Councillor Twaddle.
Thank you, Your Worship. And beyond 2015, if this goes forward, if when we negotiate a future contract, the similar savings are there, it will be an ongoing $60,000 a year saving to the budget. And I think that's the number that we need to keep in front of us. There's enough money there now to go back in 2015. Going forward, there would continue to be a $60,000 a year saving in the budget.
Councillor Chamberlain.
Yes, thank you. We've spent quite a bit of time on this new way of doing business in our strategic plan, and it's stated right here about finding new ways of increasing our efficiency. We've been talking about it since I got on council 2 years ago, and this is when we're starting to put it into action. And so I would like to support this and try something new for getting efficiency.
Okay. Any other speakers to the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Purdon, and I too am opposed. That motion is carried. We have an item number 12B8, Municipal Infrastructure Strategy Phase 2. And this is again from Director of Operations. Mr. McRoberts.
Yeah, through your worship, if I just maybe just quickly give it a quick overview of this report. Certainly just to everybody, including the public, to be aware that there is a funding strategy through the Ontario government to provide funds for infrastructure projects that consists of road, bridges, sewer and water. And through that process, council, as I believe at our last council meeting, there was a request for staff to provide a report looking at what options are available. Staff have gone through that process, looking at the particular funding program, the criteria that will be evaluated on, and the limitations to what that program's available for. And we've made a recommendation through that process to recommend that we look at upgrading the 8th Street reconstruction project and moving that forward.
It's council's direction. Councillor McManaman.
I'll move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Good, thank you. Thank you very much for this report in a pretty quick turnaround. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. And now we'll keep our fingers crossed. We have a report from the Director of Operations with regards to municipal boundary road maintenance agreements. This is on page 121 of your package. Councillor Purdon.
I'll move the recommendation to enter into agreement with Georgian Bluffs on the boundary and road maintenance.
Thank you. Councillor Twaddle.
Thank you. Certainly support this. These boundary road agreements are important, and I think they're valuable partnerships. We also have a boundary road agreement with the municipality of Meaford, but I'm not sure. I apologize. We also have a boundary road agreement with the municipality of Meaford. I'm not sure where that currently stands, and I wonder if Mr. McRoberts can tell us.
Yeah, through your worship, certainly is in process and just on a bit of a slower track.
And just as we're talking about that, then I wouldn't want to lose sight of the fact that 28th Avenue, which is a boundary road with the municipality of Meaford, has been in need of some upgrades for several years, and I think that's something that in any discussions with Meaford we need to point that out.
Through your worship, certainly this specific agreement speaks to regular maintenance and routine maintenance and not capital, although I will advise council that in the discussions leading towards these agreements, I've had several discussions with municipality of Meaford staff about the issues associated with 28th Street and moving forward some capital projects and at least bringing them in sync on a 5-year capital plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a recommendation. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We have a report from the manager of water and wastewater with regards to the wastewater treatment plant upgrade project. This is the results of the negotiation for RFP 1220, provision of consulting engineering services. And that's on page 127. Mr. McRoberts.
Certainly for council's and for the public's consideration, I'd like to at least walk through some key points within this report and some of the information that's appended to it. Certainly, council is aware that we did get a letter that was drafted by our solicitor to respond to some concerns raised by a local consulting firm. In that, it basically identifies that the person who's writing that letter, the lawyer that's involved, focuses their practice in public procurement, including municipal projects. They respond to the concerns raised by Jennifer that the pre-qualification process should have been sufficient and therefore it wasn't required, and that the RFP should have looked strictly at pricing. Certainly, it's identified that once a vendor is pre-qualified, the focus should shift entirely to pricing is inaccurate and an inappropriate method to select a preferred vendor. With respect to the concerns raised by Jennifer with regard to references, I would suggest, it's suggested through here that the references were used to in some way adjust the scoring, the technical score that was provided in the evaluation. The references obtained were not evaluated, but were used to validate or verify the position of the two highest ranked proponents, and that was completed well after the technical evaluation had occurred. With respect to the concern that the highest proponent's higher price is a problem, where the lowest price proposal is not the highest ranked proposal, the reality is that the owner is not free, that being us, the owner, legally to disregard the rules it has set in the competition. It would be unfair for the highest ranked proponent if the city were to disregard its rules as it itself set in its RFP. Doing so would violate the integrity of the procurement process. Certainly there was a point made with respect to the local preference, and that has been part of a lot of the media information. There is nothing in our RFP, in terms of reference of the RFP, or in our purchasing policy, city bylaws, or procedures that would legally permit the granting of a local preference in this procurement process. Certainly there were suggestions that there should be in tandem negotiation processes, and there was concerns about just negotiations with the highest ranked proponent. Certainly in the RFP it very clearly authorizes the city to negotiate with the highest ranked proponent and gives no authority in the RFP to enter negotiations with other proponents unless negotiations fail with the highest ranked proponent. There were some concerns with respect to the use of the $500,000 engineering allowance within the calculations. The reality of that is whether or not those numbers were used in or out of the cost calculations, the relative ranking remains unchanged. Speaking to specifically to the report in hand, certainly the city has been using a value-based selection process, which is recommended by the National Research Council of Canada and is also recommended by the Consulting Engineers of Ontario, which is an advocacy organization that members of the consulting firms throughout Ontario belong to. It's a volunteer partnership. It's not a legislative requirement to be a member. Value-based selection process is an approach to balance the factors related to qualifications and price. And this is coming out of the Consultant Engineers Consultant Selection Guideline 1999 that is presented within a framework of general position that price should not dominate the selection process. The request for proposal document spelled out the process for the proposal, clearly spelled out the process for the evaluation and scoring, and this process has been strictly followed. The report concludes that J.L. Richards has the highest technical score, and although J.L. Richards' costs were and continue to be higher, they still remain the proponent with the highest overall evaluation score. Negotiations with J.L. Richards, based upon the opinion of staff, have been successful in reducing overall cost by $740,000. This reduction in cost does not affect the value of the technical scoring, and this was confirmed with all technical scorers. The items removed were items which were beyond the scope of work identified in the terms of reference for the RFP. Staff have been able to find a mutually agreeable engineering service agreement that has been negotiated with the staff, and through our project managers, Ontario Clean Water Agency. A review is still required through our solicitor, however. And based upon the technical proposal content and the evaluation, J.L. Richards Associates will provide the best engineering service for the wastewater treatment plant upgrade. Just for council's consideration, the actual budget for the engineering work associated with the wastewater treatment plant upgrade was estimated to be at $5 million at the time the project was created. And certainly these both, certainly the cost as being awarded here or being suggested to be awarded is well under that number.
Thank you very much, Mr. McRoberts, for the overview. I'll ask if any member of council would like to speak to this. There is a motion on page 127. Councillor Twaddle.
Thank you, Your Worship. Also in the package tonight is the minutes from the Wastewater Treatment Plant Advisory Committee, which met on Friday morning and extensively reviewed this report and all of the documentation. And on a motion by Councillor Lemon, that was passed unanimously by the committee has supported the recommendation that's come forward from staff, and I would move the recommendation that we engage J.L. Richards, Conestoga Rovers to do the design engineering for the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Your Worship. A question for Mr. McRoberts. The scoring of these proposals, could you go over how that was done? Who did it? How it worked?
Yeah, through Your Worship, certainly the process for the evaluation and scoring. Proposals are received in two separate envelopes. One contains a technical proposal. The second envelope contains what they call the cost proposal, the cost component. When we receive the proposals, the cost component is essentially retained by our purchasing agent through the city and locked in a safe. The technical proposals are given to the review committee to be reviewed. That consisted of 5 members that were all professional engineers, 3 of them being staff, 2 of them being members of Aqua's project management team. Those technical proposals are reviewed and scored. Once that scoring is complete, the scores are calculated and fixed. And at that point in time, we ask the purchasing agent to come in and open the cost envelopes and witness their review. They are scored in accordance, the costs are scored in accordance to the formula prescribed in the RFP. And at that point in time, the total technical score and the total cost score are added together to give a final total score for each proposal.
When you said there was a team from Aqua, could you go into just explain for the public?
Okay, certainly, yeah. Through projects like this, of this magnitude, generally they'll retain, the cities or municipalities will retain the services of what we would consider an independent third party that wouldn't necessarily be in competition for this type of work. So we retain the services of the Ontario Clean Water Agency, which really deals with their procurement and management arm of Ontario Clean Water Agency. It has nothing to do with the division of the company that deals with water treatment or anything like that, or operates water treatment plants. So they were procured for that purpose, strictly to provide us assistance in this procurement process.
The obvious, if I might, Your Worship, still the obvious question, so through negotiations, you've been able to reduce the J.L. Richards bid by $740,000. The obvious question is going to be, so what has been removed? Are we still comparing apples to apples here? Could you just, not too much detail, but just sort of overview of what was removed during those negotiations?
Yeah, certainly, just to go through that process, we focused on what is the original scope of the project. What will happen in some cases, a consultant might try to add certain scopes to a project based upon their belief of what it consists of. So in the negotiation process with J.L. Richards, we sat down with them, we went through looking at what their proposal was, what scopes they had included, and revisited the terms of reference of the request for proposal. And in that process, they identified certain things that they had included in their proposal that were beyond that level of scope.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just might, so just to clarify, the Consulting Engineers of Ontario, an independent non-for-profit organization, the National Research Council, and a leading procurement law firm have all endorsed the way the city has undertaken this process. I think that, I don't think you can underline that enough. A process that was laid out that all the proponents were well aware of right from the start, a process that was under the that was done with some staff, but also with an independent engineering firm that does this all the time. And we entered into negotiations with the technical highest score. In my mind, I'm quite comfortable with the process as we move forward here. I commend staff. This has been a difficult discussion. There was a mention that we're not for question if we're following our purchasing bylaw. From what I read from our purchasing bylaw, I would respectfully disagree. I think we are following our purchasing bylaw, and we're certainly following the rules that were laid out in the original process for the different firms. So I'll support the resolution. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. I'll ask Councillor Wright to take the chair, please. I'd like to speak to this. Thank you. I feel I believe it's really important that this be addressed by myself as mayor and as a member of this council. There's two issues that are really at play here. One issue is the process, and the other issue is an issue of public perception. I'm going to speak to the process, and I'll ask council's indulgence. I might take 3 or 4 minutes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. To the process, city staff used in this RFP. It is a responsibility of this and all municipalities to use a consistent process of working with suppliers to enhance mutual trust and enhance relationships. It is imperative that the submission that receives the highest evaluation score and meets all mandatory requirements set out in the competitive bid be the winning bid. The process used was standard and fair. We heard Mr. McRoberts speak to the 2-envelope scoring mechanism in terms of a technical score and a price score. I can say a low price is not an indicator always of best in field. Choosing the lowest price certainly does not always provide the best value. The value for money approach that the engineering staff and the selection consultants used for this process, which is a qualifications-based assessment, is fair, is competitive, it's widely accepted in municipalities across Canada as a best practice. The initial investment in quality consulting engineering services creates significant long-term returns throughout the entire construction and maintenance costs, and certainly, in my view, provides better quality public service. I'll speak very briefly to the concept of local, to the idea of local. If you believe that the process is to be fair, open, and competitive, then all suppliers, regardless of their geographic location, should be permitted to compete on their ability to provide maximum value for the public funds to be spent. Value for money approach. The approach used here aims to deliver goods and/or services at the optimum total life cycle cost. And that is if you're going to do it right. On a $45 million wastewater treatment plant project that is going to protect the waters of Georgian Bay, the ongoing health and well-being of our residents today and future generations, we simply must do it right the first time. The future operation and maintenance costs of this project underline just why it is so important to start with the highest scoring, technically, consultant. In terms of statements that have been made in recent weeks with regards to the city and its support of the business community in general, particularly in the manufacturing sector, I can tell you this. I can tell you the City of Owen Sound values all businesses in this community. We walk the talk. Since 2010, Owen Sound, this council, has reduced the tax rate on the commercial tax rate, a decrease of 7.37%, on the industrial tax rate, a decrease of 4.10%, and on the large industrial tax rate, of which we should be extremely proud, this council has pushed forward a decrease in the tax rate of 16.42%. And that is at the same time providing a high level of service to both residents and businesses of this community. The city is committed to blending our tax rates with the county tax rates, which are lower, and council is working towards that goal at a steady pace. We are not Montreal, we are not Laval, we are not Toronto, and we are not London. We have an open, fair, competitive procurement process. It's open to all qualified businesses. What we do have is a communication issue. Economic Development Committee is made up of local industrialists and business people from a variety of sectors meeting regularly to discuss strategies and work to bring more jobs to this city. I urge this council to pass a motion to host an open town hall session with public procurement experts and senior staff on hand for presentation of the city's purchasing policies and procedures. I believe it is our responsibility as a city to regularly communicate the mandatory requirements and get feedback from key stakeholders. With this in mind, again, I urge council to consider a motion with this intent, and that this meeting in a town hall fashion be convened not later than the end of February 2013. Consultation and communication is required. And again, I am particularly proud of staff in their professionalism in handling and guiding through this process. It has certainly been difficult for many staff members, and it's been particularly trying for council. So I have to say that that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I think that you'll have to get that brought up after this. We deal with this motion. You can bring that up.
You are correct. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wright, and I will go to you for your comments.
I just have one comment to make, and my comment is what happened just tonight, and when we had a public meeting next door with a consultant on our downtown redevelopment, and as council was leaving, one of our citizens stood up and said how pleased she was that the consultant that we had hired came from Owen Sound, and that City Council considered a local person to do that job. And the person that is doing the job said to her and to everyone in that room, please, I want to work at jobs elsewhere too. I want to work in other communities as well. So we have to keep that in mind too, that we want our people in the city of Owen Sound to be able to work in other communities. We don't want to say we only hire locally, because that's what other communities will do to us then too. So I felt that that was a very good comment that we heard, and I believe what the mayor, your comments were appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers to the motion? Councillor Twaddle?
Just very briefly to wrap it up, Your Worship, I want to thank you for your comments. I think it's really important. It can't be said often enough that around this table we have a fiduciary responsibility to get the best value for the tax dollars that our taxpayers entrust us to spend. And I want to just pick up very quickly on a point that Councillor McManaman made about the RFP process. The process that we used to make this selection was spelled out in the RFP. And I believe that there's a point in law that by responding to the RFP, you accept the process that we have spelled out. It's our process. We followed a process that was well recommended and that was fair and that was clearly spelled out. And as with any bid on any issue, when you bid, you accept the terms of the person putting out the bid. And that's what happened this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers to the motion? Councillor Purdon?
Briefly, I do support the motion, and certainly from this position as a councillor, I've felt comfortable with the information that's been provided by staff through the entire process from the beginning to the end. I do agree with the mayor that there's a need for more communication for the for the public. And I know it is a competitive process, so the stakes are high for everyone who's involved in this process, and our job is to be very clear about being fair about the information and how the process has been handled. From this side of the room, I feel very comfortable with how the process has been handled and the decision making. And I would urge Council also to consider the Mayor's recommendation to have a town hall on the communication side of things for procurements for the future.
Further discussions? Comments? To the motion, all those in favor? All those opposed? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. We now have a subsequent motion. Councillor Wright.
Yes, I will make the motion that we proceed with the town hall meeting and that we bring in appropriate persons to discuss the procedure of purchase and RFPs and all of those things as an information evening and even as communication. And prior, as you said, to February 28th.
Sure. City Manager.
We'd be pleased to do such a session. We may need some budget to do it properly, and I'm a little concerned with the end of February date. When you go to advertise this, you want to know exactly what you're going to be doing in that workshop, and given that we're going to come crashing into the end of December right now, if I could have some leeway of perhaps going into the beginning of March, that would be helpful, so that we can give people enough notice.
March 10th.
And that would be okay, but we've got to make sure that we do it.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to see this happen in June.
No,
Okay,
if you could just give me March, I'd be,
okay, then
I'll give you a better product.
I'll remove the date and leave it at city manager's request.
Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. I have to ask for clarification. What is the exact, what will take place at the town hall? A discussion of what our current policies are?
Yeah, it's to provide an opportunity. There is under the provincial directive procurement policies, there is a requirement that municipalities have regular communications sessions with suppliers as well as the general public in terms of policies and procedures that are on the books with the municipality at any given time for public procurement. That is really what it would speak to.
Just, if I might, I'm not sure that would require, wouldn't that just be existing staff explaining what we currently do?
The ideas just come to staff today, so perhaps I could consult with particularly the Director of Finance and get back to you on that.
Fair enough.
Councillor. Go ahead, Councillor Body.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have some concerns with this idea at this time. I frankly would want advice from the city's solicitor before we move ahead with this. We're sitting in a situation, we're sitting in a situation, period. I don't think it's necessarily in the city's best interest to move ahead with a public meeting at this time. I think it's possible, but I would want to be pretty darn sure that we know what we're doing.
Councillor Adair.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to Councillor Body's point, I'm sure that between now and March that our staff can look into that. Just to the point of there being a cost or just having our own staff do it, I think that what you, Your Worship, and what Councillor Wright are trying to get at is that, well, I could use a profanity. We're not just pulling these policies and that out of thin air. These are policies, and I think what we want to have are people, one or two people from around the province who either write on this or litigate on this, or who are involved with this, perhaps even someone from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, who also recommends this process, along with our own provincial association, to come and say, these are the best practices that are recommended in the province of Ontario through provincial legislation, federal legislation, international law, and this is what the city does. I believe that's what Councillor Wright and Councillor and Your Worship are getting at, and I think that speaks to having someone outside of this organization come in and speak to those issues.
Thank you, Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think any kind of communication that we can have with our constituents is the route to go. And I don't think you can ever have enough communication with your constituents. So I think that the meeting should go ahead. Public meeting should go ahead, and we'll just see if there's enough interest out there for people to come and find out what's happening with the city, or if it just is a one-issue situation.
That's right. Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed? Councillor Body, Councillor McManaman. Thank you. I think it is extremely important that our policies be open, and our policies be that we stand behind our policies, and they're put up to public scrutiny on a regular basis. This will just provide a more informal opportunity for people to come forward and have that discussion. Thank you. We have a number of correspondence items. Councillor Twaddle.
Yeah, I just move that we receive several correspondence items related to the wastewater treatment plant engineering design project.
All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a report from the Manager of Water and Wastewater with regards to the 2013 fiscal year and beyond.
Through your worship, if I may, I'd like to ask the Manager of Wastewater to just walk through. This is a fairly voluminous report. Maybe just to briefly go through it quickly with you, just to make sure that it's clear and give the public an opportunity to understand its contents.
To you, Your Worship. I'll give a conceptual overview of the plan before Council. It is a long report. The intent is to present a 5-year plan for the operations of the wastewater treatment plant. The intent is to save a little bit of money in 2013 and also lay the groundwork for the operations of the new wastewater treatment plant after it is upgraded to secondary treatment in the future. The role of the existing contractor would be reduced under this plan. They will retain a role with respect to biosolids and reporting. They will also contribute to some of our existing capital programs with the installation of improved monitoring equipment for bypass monitoring and the TV inspection of the sanitary sewers. The city under this plan would take on 2 of the existing Veolia staff at the plant, ultimately with a view towards having an appropriate staffing level for secondary, which would be 3 persons. Also, the objective of the plan is to improve the service around wastewater in general by having merged operations of wastewater collection and wastewater treatment. As you know, the city already operates the collection system on its own. The plan also speaks to a conceptual future idea that relates to the upgrade, which is the concept of the wastewater treatment plant becoming a training center. Among other things, we would exchange operators with similar plants, namely Kingston, and we would have other opportunities for third-party training at the site in the future. That's the conceptual direction given in the plan. If there's any questions.
Thank you very much. There's a motion. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Your Worship. First thing, if to Mr. McRoberts, could this report, just for information, go to the Operations Committee as well? Because I know they've discussed a number of these items, and it'd be good for them to be kept up to date on this. A question to Mr. Prentice. So you talk about saving $40,000 in the first year with this move, but in 2013, moving to 2014 and beyond, maybe just explain that. There's a reduction in cost of $40,000, but moving forward into 2014.
The concept is basically that we add that third body in mid-2013. That third body would be a wastewater treatment and collection operator who would help in both roles. Consequently, in 2014, our labor costs would be higher than in 2013 and would take us back to approximately the same order of magnitude of costs as we already had in 2012. However, we'll have a staff complement of 3 people, which is approximately the appropriate level for a secondary treatment plant at that time.
So without this move, in 2014, you'd be coming back with a recommendation of at least a $40,000 increase in the budget, because you need to hire additional staff for the secondary. This at least keeps us a savings in 2013 and keeps us even moving forward after
Yes.
that. Thank you.
Further discussion? We have a motion on the floor. Anybody move the motion? Councillor Purdon.
I'll move the motion.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a report from the Manager of Public Works with regards to the county winter maintenance agreement. What was council's direction? Councillor Wright.
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Any discussion? Councillor Twaddle?
Just to clarify, this is renewal of an ongoing agreement where the city provides winter maintenance on the county roads within the boundaries of the city.
Councillor McManaman.
Question for Mr. McRoberts. Is there any increase this year from last? It doesn't speak to that here.
Through you, Your Worship, yeah, there is an increase based upon last year of roughly about $300. And this fee that we charge them is basically a per kilometer fee. So it's multiplied by the number of kilometers we maintain.
Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We have a report from the engineering services with regards to 1795 Fifth Avenue East, requested land purchase. It's council's direction. Councillor Wright.
Just a question, if I might.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure who can answer this, but did we get in touch with these people to tell them, give them this information?
No, we did not bring this information forward to them. Certainly the existing motion from council as provided was for staff to provide more information to council on their requests specifically. I do know the clerk did forward out for council's reference the previous report that identified the request made by the owners of the property to purchase the road allowance.
Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. Do we know the reason they wanted to purchase this piece of property? Was it for a new lot, or is there any?
Oh, the clerk, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Through your worship, it's my understanding that they were thinking of severing the property that is adjacent to this piece. And what they had advised was that they would be able to sever into 2 lots with their existing property and 3 lots if they were able to acquire this additional piece of road allowance.
Councillor Twaddle.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Wright and I both raised this issue when it came forward. It appears that within the area that they would wish to acquire, there are a number of services located. It would I don't like to assume things, but I would assume that given the number of services located within the property they wish to acquire, that the cost of relocating all of those services to the road allowance would be prohibitive. But I would move that we receive this report, inform the people who made this request, and perhaps give them some order of magnitude number around the cost of relocating those services in order to go forward. Because I think it's a very wide road allowance. Various people, including the city providing services, have taken advantage of that over many years in the past, and relocating all of those services I think would be cost prohibitive, but we should let the folks who made this request at least be aware of that and make a judgment. So I would just move that we receive the report and provide this information to the families that made that request.
Okay. Any further comments? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you. We have a series of minutes of boards and committees for approval. I will just excuse myself for this portion for item 12C7. So I'll ask if Councillor Wright, if you could just take the chair for the balance. All of them, actually. All of them.
Okay, thank you. What is council's wish on all of these minutes? Councillor Adair.
I actually wish to speak on 2 of the minutes. I guess I would move all of the minutes, and then I wish to speak on 2 of them.
Okay, you're moving all of the minutes, but you were speaking on 2 of them.
Yes.
Okay, you have the floor.
Thank you. Just to bring council's attention to the Accessibility Committee meetings minutes. One of the deliberations at that meeting was about the sidewalk on First Avenue West, north of the bandstand, or I guess the lack of sidewalk. I know that it has been identified as a deficient sidewalk within the city's general purview of deficient sidewalks, but the committee had, and there's a motion here, asked that it be looked at sooner rather than later as being finished, so as not to create an island of inaccessibility. And I know that there are other groups that would like to see that sidewalk finished as well. So those are contained within these minutes. So council would be endorsing engineering and operation, at least taking a look at that for next year within that budget. The other is the bylaw committee minutes, and just two issues to draw council's attention to. One is in regards to the traffic bylaw, and after quite a bit of consideration and something that had been brought forward to the committee by police inspector, that the bylaw was not consistent when it came to accessibility parking and whether people needed to pay if they had a valid accessible sticker or license in their car. The committee is recommending that should you have such a valid accessible permit, that you do not need to, although you're welcome to, put money in the meters or the ticket spitters, that in light of there not being a parking space, an accessible parking space available, and you should park somewhere else, that you would not need to put money in the meter. That is contained in those minutes. The other that's in the minutes and was actually handed out to council, and I'll just draw council's attention to it, is the work plan for that committee for next year. There are about 40 bylaws and city policies that are being reviewed. I'm not saying that council can't pile more onto that committee, but as you can see, it's going to take us to December, or that committee to December, to work through these. We do have a work plan, so I know council has identified many different bylaws that we wish to review, and they are all here and identified, and as council wishes to identify any others, it will be worked into the work plan. But Please don't think that because council has said they want a bylaw looked at, that it's being ignored. It will be done in the fullness of time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Lemon?
Yes, speaking to the first bylaw pertaining to the sidewalk on First Avenue West here from the bandstand north, I really encourage council to pass that because we have an accessible bandstand, except if you happen to be parked to the north of that, you have to go to the cenotaph to get up on the sidewalk to go to the bandstand, and that is patently ridiculous. And if you look at the pathway there, the huge number of people that have worn the path over the years indicates that there is a demand for this sidewalk. But from an accessibility point of view, we've created, as Councillor Adair said, an island of inaccessibility. We get this wonderful bandstand, which is completely accessible, except if you park north of it, you have to go a city block down to get your scooter or whatever up on the sidewalk in order to get onto the bandstand. It's totally inappropriate, so I would certainly hope the council will pass this.
Anyone else? Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Worship. To Mr. McRoberts, this discussion, do we have any idea of the cost involved here? And I realize you may not.
Through you, Your Worship, certainly the only thing I can offer is that the costs to complete the section of concrete sidewalk that was installed from where it existed just past the cenotaph to the band shell was roughly about $15,000. So I'm going to project that that's probably going to be in that general neighborhood to extend it further north to those accessibility parking spaces to the north close to 9th Street.
And if I might, how much is in the annual sidewalk replacement budget?
There's usually roughly about $75,000, but includes work that wasn't completed this year due to the weather.
I'm just wondering, we're dealing with the capital budget next Monday, if perhaps we couldn't have a more fulsome discussion around this particular issue at that time. And that would give staff also time to get a more exact cost, and then it may not be possible this year, but at least we'd have the information before we voted. Sorry, Your Worship, I did have some other items I wanted to raise, but not on this. There's several people I think who want to.
Anyone else to this particular issue? Councillor Chamberlain?
Yes, I'm not sure if we're being asked to look at this work plan and this timing. The question, and this is changing the topic a wee bit, but around the annual parking system review, it looks, if we're going by this, it looks like it's not till next September. My question is, where are we at with the work we've done on the parking this fall and the idea that we were going to go forward with with the on-street 2-hour free parking between
Councillor Adair?
extended, yes, if you could.
Thank you, Your Worship. Wednesday.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Purdon?
Just going back to Councillor McManaman and the Councillor Lemon's discussion on the sidewalk. We just had a public meeting earlier this evening about the whole plans for the river development, and the sidewalks will definitely be part of all of that planning. So perhaps we need to consider all of that in terms of the accessibility of that area, the plan that Kim Allerton is just preparing.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, Councillor McManaman.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't know how I would ask for a report to come on this matter to the capital budget next week. Could that just...
It's
Oh, all right. Councillor, you're suggesting I ask that matter be pulled on the priority sidewalk on the east side, Queen's Park, and voted on separately.
okay.
Well, no, we can still approve the motion and just ask that it come forward to capital budget.
That's right.
Yeah, so
So you
If
don't,
I
we
could
don't
ask for a
have to
friendly
vote on it
amendment.
separately, we just have to approve the minutes and then it'll go forward.
and if we could, then, and further friendly amendment that we ask staff to bring a report back to the capital budget on this item.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I did have one other matter on the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee minutes and on the minor sports subsidy. As council's aware, that's been a discussion over the last couple of months, and I'd like to commend our staff and our committee. This process worked, I would suggest, exactly how it's supposed to work. We came forward with, or there were some suggestions from council. We needed to look at some cost savings. The committee and our staff drafted a report. The committee discussed it. We invited public input. We heard from several of the minor sports groups, and we now have and we listened to them and altered some of our policy. I think the main, and I can't find it here right now, but I think the main, there it is. The main part of it is that we address some of the inequity between the subsidy that ice sports receive and non-ice sports receive. So we've moved to address some of that. We heard from the groups about impact on tournaments and kept the subsidy for tournaments to encourage more tournaments in the city economic development. And I certainly hope the groups take a look at the report where it talks about impact on people with low income, that there are ways to generate funds through tournaments to help pay for some of those low income people that possibly can't pay some of these higher costing sports. So I just want to, as it stands, if this is approved, non-ice sports would remain at a 30% subsidy. Ice sports would, over 5 years, move to a 15% subsidy for prime ice. And that would, in 5 years, see a savings in this budget of about $45,000. So, as we've discussed tonight, there's been a number of items where we've, whether it's waste management or ice subsidy or the tourism office, looked at ways to do business different and to generate more income or more savings. So, just wanted to highlight that and congratulate the committee and staff. This process worked very well.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lemon.
Yeah, something that would be nice to have for budget would be the actual, like, we have a certain hourly rate for ice time, we have it for ball, we have it for soccer, et cetera. It'd be really nice to know all our costs, including attributed capital costs of equipment, et cetera, to those facilities, so we know exactly how much. Like, we have an adult rate. Does that cover all the costs, or is there subsidy on top of that? I'm not sure how much there is, if there's any. So I'm just wondering if at some time we could get that information.
Pam.
Through you,
Ms.
Your
Colbert.
Worship, a few years ago, Rec and Parks Committee had done a major review of all fees, so perhaps I'll start by pulling those reports. One of them dealt specifically with ice time. I'll provide it to council through committee and we can go from there.
What about the ball diamond?
All of those facilities were covered, so.
Anyone else? Okay, the recommendation is on the floor to accept the minutes. All those in favor? That motion carries. Thank you. We'll get the mayor back in here, and here she comes.
Thank you. We are at minutes of in-camera meetings for approval. Thank you, Councillor Wright. What is council's wish? Council's direction. Councillor Purdon.
Move acceptance of the in-camera minutes.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. We're at other business. Councillor Adair.
Thank you, Your Worship. Seeing that the bylaw committee doesn't have quite enough to review over the next little while, several people have approached me in regards to our civic marriage policy that we have at the city, and it may be time to review that, particularly where we may, and one of the reasons I would like to review it is that we may be in direct competition with the private sector by performing civic marriage services outside of the City Hall. And so I would ask that council refer that issue and the policy to the bylaw committee.
Okay. That's a motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Anything else, Councillor Adair? Thank you. Madam Clerk. Oh, excuse me, 1 minute. I'm getting a wave from the city manager.
Well, I just want to take this opportunity to tell you the exciting news of the day is that the new parking meters and ticket spitters have arrived. And we hope to have them installed before the new year.
That is some news. Madam Clerk.
My matter was a bylaw which will come forward in the bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McRoberts, you had an item of other business?
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. I think it's been addressed, or maybe we should probably bring it forward. Okay. So we just need to approve these minutes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McManaman? All those in favor? Thank you. That's carried. Oh, look where we are. We need a motion that the committee rise. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We're in formal session. Resolution adopting proceedings in committee of the whole, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Body, that action taken in Committee of the Whole in considering public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business be hereby confirmed by this council.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Notices of motion, new business by resolution, bylaws, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Body, that bylaw numbers 2012-205, 206, 207, 208, and 209 be hereby passed and enacted.
All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. We are adjourned. Have a good evening.